It always starts with your audience first.
2 or 3 things that you didn't expect probably to work that well.
So our goal was to get 150, 200 ideas. We ended up getting, I think, 500 to 600 ideas.
What's the secret to leading marketing teams effectively?
Marketing is marketing irrespective of who you're doing it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the CXO Show. My name is Swapnil Comet, and we are, of course, in the midst of the lovely CMO edition that we're running. We've done quite a few episodes so far, and I have to tell you that I've thoroughly enjoyed my experience of talking to some of India's most successful professionals in the domain of marketing. Of course, Jay, I have one such professional with me, which I shall be introducing very quickly. But before that, for those of you all who are watching this show for the first time, the CXO Show is a show that is been built with the objective of giving its audience something which is real, something which is practical, and something which is implementable in their day-to-day life. Our audience typically are professionals, and we want to cater to them with ideas that they can actually use in their lives. So that's the objective that we set out with a learning podcast, so to speak. And today I have with me Xenia Alphonso. Xenia is the Marketing and Communication Director of Dentsu Global Services with over 14 years of experience. She's been a part of the Times Group. She's built communication at Ugam and is now shaping global experiences at Dentsu. She has led high performing teams and delivered campaigns that blend brand depth with measurable business impact. Xenia is known for weaving storytelling events and digital innovation into cohesive brand ecosystems that are built to inspire and drive results. Welcome to the show, Xenia. We're excited to have you.
Thanks, Swapnil. There was a lot of words put in there, but it's interesting to hear it when someone else says it.
Well, I have to start with the interesting way in which we met. I don't meet my guests like that more often than not. I was having a fun night out at 1633, and Xenia was there with her lovely husband, and that's where we bumped into each other. And then there was a realization that both of us have some common Goan heritage.
Yeah.
So that common heritage led to a lot of chatter between us through the night, a fun night, and then I realized that Xenia was one of the extremely successful marketing professionals. So I was like, let's get her on the show and let's make something of it.
I don't know about extremely successful, but yeah, I think 14 years have been an interesting experience, definitely. And I think I've met a lot of great people along the way that have shaped me into who I am. And that night was was a fun night as well. We haven't been to 1633 after that. Maybe we should.
Yeah. Let's catch up there. Post podcast
Yes,
catch up.
yes.
Yeah, cool. So first of all, for Dentsu, of course, in the world of marketing, Dentsu is an extremely well known name, right? But for a lot of the listeners who are not aware of what Dentsu Global Services does, kind of explain to us what Dentsu Global Services does. Tell us a little about Dentsu as well. So let's start with that. That lays a little bit of context.
Yeah. So Dentsu Global Services is Dentsu's global capability center, right? And I'm sure a lot of your listeners would be aware of, that growth of the industry in India. So GCCs is what you call them. So Dentsu set it up with, 5 different companies that got acquired by Dentsu and have now consolidated into their global capability to really support all of Dentsu's network brands, and partner with them to really drive value for clients globally. And so, in terms of what Dentsu does, I think everyone is very well aware of, right? So it's 120 years of rich heritage, right, starting in Japan. And of course, they started as a media company, right? And then eventually evolved into creative as well. And now, over the past few years, have actually expanded significantly in customer experience, where they've built capabilities in analytics, technology, commerce, all your sales flow force and various other technologies to really drive better experiences online. And so Dentsu is really looking at bringing all of these 3 aspects of, marketing, whether it's right from your media to firstly creative, right? Thinking about your creatives, your ads, etc., to getting the right media spends and optimizing and performance marketing, all of that to ensuring and delivering great experiences. And so Dentsu Global Services really supports that entire uh, you know value chain or value that Dentsu wants to really drive for its clients. So yeah.
Got it. Interesting. I've never spoken to a marketing leader from GCC, and this is a very specific GCC, right? So the GCC that supports one of the world's biggest ad and media agency, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? Give me an example of two or three things you do out of this GCC for your for Dentsu globally. If you can just share an example, so then people really understand
Yeah.
what you'll do out of this place.
Yeah. So maybe if I take one example, for example, I mean, of course, within DGS and as everyone's talking about, AI is huge,
Mm.
right? And so
Mm.
we have a large team of AI professionals. It's not so much large in terms of numbers, but more in terms of capability, right? So very advanced team there, and they've been at it for the past 8 9 years. We've built our own proprietary platform, etc. And so this team worked very closely with the Americas market, right, on a broadcast client and leveraged AI. So it's basically a teaming without borders. So you have teams in Americas and teams in India working collaboratively across time zones. Really blending capabilities across different teams. So you're getting really the best of what's skill sets in Americas with the best of skill sets in India, and then bring that all together to drive meaningful work and value for clients, right? So in this case, for example, for the broadcaster, we deployed AI to really help support, them to give recommendations, right?
Mm.
And to do that at scale and to personalize that. And it's, of course, there's more technicalities to it, but if I have to just simplify it, it is how do you use, AI to drive personalized recommendations so that their customers and viewers can, you know, get recommended serials that really resonate with them based on what their current viewing and watching
Habits would
habits
be.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. And is the work from here restricted to tech and tech related stuff, or
Yeah.
does it
So
also
that's one
span other
example.
areas as well? Yeah,
Then the others, of course, we do a lot of media work. So we have
yeah.
teams that do programmatic and performance marketing. And over there, in fact, and it's public information, we support Microsoft with a team of 250 plus people in India that support a lot of their key Microsoft campaigns. And this includes really us working with 50 plus markets across the globe, because of course Microsoft's a large account as well and globally spread, to really support them with whether it's their social media boosting or campaign boosting and things like that. So we work as an extension to the teams in the markets to deliver this work out of India.
Got it. So it's tech and non-tech related
Yes.
work. Y'all do both
Yeah.
of y'all and support your
Yeah.
counterparts from all over the world. Very good. The thing with the GCC industry and the reason my questions is because all of us are looking at that as, in a way, a sunrise industry in India. And of course, we have tons of GCCs already which are here, but we're seeing more and more of international GCCs coming into India, and that's why it's a topic of huge interest to people. So, from that lens, Xenia, you're the marketing and communications director of this GCC, right?
Yes.
So, what does a marketing and communications leader need to do of a GCC? Tell me some of the work that y'all do, the buckets in which that falls in. I'm very intrigued and interested in that.
Yeah. So a couple of things, and in fact, your earlier comment. In fact, I was just reading, rather watching a video recently, which spoke about
Hmm.
how founders and startups, startups of founders and engineers are actually choosing to move from startup culture to a more GCC culture because of the way the trend and the growth path that GCCs are going to see in the future. But to your question, so currently within DGS, the focus is, like I said, to really support clients globally through Dentsu. So our primary focus, and since DGS is quite new within the Dentsu ecosystem, so while we got set up in 23, like you can imagine, it was a journey for us to also, undergo, because we had five different companies that needed to get, consolidated. And then you have a large network like Dentsu that has been established for so many years, with certain ways of working and, processes, etc. So, I would think right now in 25 is where we're actually seeing, the whole vision of what Dentsu wanted to, achieve by establishing DGS really sort of come to life and, start to take shape. And so the first priority is really making sure that folks within Dentsu first are aware of our capabilities, right? Because I could be sitting in Sweden, or I could be sitting in, Canada, different places very far from India. I would never know what the capabilities are within an organization that's 5,600 plus strong, right? So, uh, so that's the first expectation, right? And so towards that, doing various campaigns, whether it's internally or creating, go to market decks or case studies to really talk about our capabilities is the first priority. And that comes along with some interesting things like when people visit us, right, with the kind of experiences you create and the stories you tell them, is what actually sticks, right? And then how do you translate those ideas or those experiences into virtual experiences, because not everyone's going to be able to visit you in India, right? So that's one. The second is, and we've just about started it now, is establishing Dentsu Global Services as a leading analytics, technology, and marketing, and of course, creative organization in India, right? Because as you would know, everyone knows Dentsu for its media capabilities and its creative capabilities, creative agency. They, folks coming out of engineering schools, looking at, Salesforce, Adobe, and, your Google Cloud or AWS aren't thinking of Dentsu as their number one place to work, right? And so really establishing DGS as a thought leader in, leading technology platforms in AI, or in even just the way media and creativity is going to transform in the future is, an important aspect. And so that comes with all the exciting things that everyone does when it comes to brand marketing, right? So whether it's events and speaking opportunities, or doing workshops, content marketing, as well as community engagements, and so a whole host of things there. Um, and then, of course, like in any organization, when you have 5,600, organization strength sitting in India plus the Philippines. So we also have a team in the Philippines. And now, given the whole hybrid culture, right, where everyone's not coming into office as much as you'd like them to, how do you make sure that everyone is aware of our vision and our strategy and the capabilities that exist within us, so that they can be better representatives of DGS, whenever they're talking to Dentsu colleagues, or when they're talking to clients, or even to prospective talent, right? So that again is a lot of fun. In fact, we just did a roadshow recently where we went to all our offices in India and the Philippines to really, promote and talk about our vision and strategy. And it's great to always meet people and to learn different, just hear their stories and their aspirations. So that was exciting.
Interesting. So, if I had to summarize your answer, as a GCC operating out of India, one major task is internal marketing to all the other offices that could potentially give you that work. I think that is one part of it.
Yes.
Second part of it is it employer branding? That would be the right way, right? So employer branding, so that you all become the first port of call, so to speak, when somebody is looking at making a career in technology, AI, so on and so forth. And third, I think building the mindset of your own people, the 5,600 people that you have, since you all are relatively new after the acquisitions that you've done. So those are the three kind of main buckets that are there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I haven't often seen internal marketing as also a form of marketing, and that's why I'm very intrigued to have this conversation with you. How different, Xenia, is internal marketing than say marketing to a consumer or a client outside of your ecosystem? Tell me what are the good parts about it and what are the not so good parts about it.
So,
But don't be politically correct. Huh? Give me a
no,
good
I'm not
juicy
being
answer.
politically correct. So the first fact is that marketing is marketing irrespective of who you're doing it. It always starts with your audience first,
Hmm.
right? So whether you're doing it for a client or you're doing it internally, um, the rules of marketing kind of stay the same, which is knowing what your audience needs, what are their concerns, what are their perceptions, and then building a plan that really, will resonate with them, will meet them, where they are in their journey, and not just be, content you're just sharing with them to spam them, right? So in that way, it's not very different. So in fact, at Ugam, we used to do a lot of client marketing, and we used to only do client marketing at that time, and it was
Hmm.
in the Americas region and the Australia. So we've actually used a lot of those same principles, and um, templates and things, all the good things that work there, and adapted to internal marketing. I guess the not so good things is that, that's the journey that we're on, is you should not necessarily be marketing internally, right? You want to be in a place where people realize why you exist and want to know more about your capabilities, and you're able to then share that material with them, but not necessarily market to your colleagues, but just more keep them informed. And so that's a journey, I think, like all GCCs, that's a journey that you have to undergo, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Now, there's a very nice quote that says the problems in your job is the reason why your job exists, right?
Yes.
So I think the big problem very often is that, we may be more attentive to an external message than often we are to an
Mhm.
internal message, right? And that's why I think internal marketing becomes so goddamn important. Yeah. What were you
And to
saying?
your point, Swapnil, I think very often it is when people see it externally that they start believing it internally. You can say
Mm,
whatever you want internally, but until they don't see proofs of it, in clients saying it, or
mm,
in, you being able to deliver outcomes that matter. And,
mm.
if they are able to, like, an award you win or differentiating yourself from competition, is when folks internally then start saying, okay, that, because if you just go and tell them, hey, here's our capability deck, very often and not, they're not reading that email.
Got it. Awesome. That's interesting. So what I think that's a very interesting kind of message for any marketeer out there, right? Which is whether it's internal or external, in the end, audience first, right? At all points of time, everything starts with that, and therefore the principles of marketing, whether you're marketing to an internal colleague or an external customer, don't really change. I think that's a very kind of insightful thing because I would imagine that it would a lot, right? That's a great message. Tell me, Xenia, what tell me two or three initiatives that really hit a chord with people, right? And two or three things that you didn't expect probably to work that well that really took off from an internal marketing point of view. Anything comes to your mind immediately?
Yes, so
Yeah.
I think the first one is, and it's not so much internal marketing to Dentsu, but it was within DGS
Mm,
when we first started up. And this was back in 23, right? 2023, when we just started up. People were still had like loyalty to their legacy brands, and they had their own groups and very connected within their groups, did not know anything beyond their organization that they were part of, but now needed to know other organizations, and know about everything else that happens within this one organization, but currently is 5 different teams, right? And so at that time, we thought, instead of us going and asking folks to tell us, about the hidden gems, and because even it was a discovery for us, right? We didn't know ourselves what existed within an organization of that size, right? Because you're 2,000 people to suddenly now becoming 5,600, right? How do you bridge that gap? And so we initiated a campaign that was called Ideation. And so it was idea with TIO in capital and then N. Um, and the whole premise why TIO was because it was saying transformation, innovation, and operational excellence, right? And so it was a campaign where we basically asked folks to share their best ideas right, on a platform that enabled us to then evaluate all these ideas and then, award people with, ideas that have been really successful, right, in terms of implementation. What this did was, one, it as a campaign, I think the team did a great job of, firstly, again, using a lot of the principles of marketing, which is making sure your logo and your design and all of that is spot on, and has the right colors and all of, I mean, the right, like, even your logo at the end of the day stands out. Like, if you see the logo, you'd know what I mean. I don't have it accessible right now to share. But what we also did is we made sure that the campaign was relevant to them at the right touch points. So whether you are in office or whether you're online, you will see the campaign. So it definitely created a lot of buzz within the organization, and so a lot of people were talking about it. Of course, the cash prize was a lofty sum as well that made people more excited. But it also very quickly gave us approximately. So our goal was to get 150, 200 ideas. We ended up getting, I think, 500 to 600 ideas, right? Of course, it required us to make sure managers were pushing for it internally, right, and partner with them, do interesting scoreboards and things like that. And so the moment that happened, and we had access to 500, 600 ideas, we then got folks within Dentsu to judge these ideas, right, which gave them visibility, because now they are on a great platform to as judges and jury,
Got it.
and not so much as, hey, like a salesman, here's all the great, but here's more, where they are in a spot of prominence and they get to evaluate and pick, and so they get visibility to, all the great ideas that sit within DGS. And then, of course, later on, those ideas were then, supported and implemented, and then drove outcomes for clients. So I think that was an interesting campaign. In fact, our CEO said that if he had to award it for, which the team did get awarded later, but they said that if he had to award it for the best, and he's been in multiple organizations, so if he had to award it for the best, like an employee branding campaign, then that would have been one of it. So that was an interesting one. I'm trying to think of other.
No, before you go to the next one, my question: what was your learning out of that? What was the insight out of doing this and it becoming a success?
So I think,
What's the principle that we
yeah.
can take out of
So I
this?
think the
Yeah.
one principle is, which worked in this campaign, is meeting your audience where they are, right? So becoming relevant to them where they are. So whether it is like on a table in the cafeteria, we said, I think over there we did, I don't remember the line now, but on the cafeteria table, there was a poster down over there saying maybe ideas come to life here or while you're eating. And then it had a QR code which made sure people scanned, and then they would be able to, so it reminded them whether they were in the washroom or whether they were, on their desk. So we used various touch points to make sure that, people would see it in the right places and not just, emails, and not
Got it.
just, your regular, maybe like a digital wall that's kept somewhere in an office, or, Teams chats, but it's more being real in the right moment, that I think differentiates a campaign and also creates recall.
Got it. That's interesting because when you were talking about this, that's the one thing that came to my mind as well. That, very often we talk about how to market to an external customer, and we talk about the same principle, right? Of saying that you can't just hit them at one place. You need to be able to hit them in multiple different places. So, in a way, you need to be on TV, then, they need to see you in a billboard, or they need to see you on the phone as a part of a
Yes.
YouTube ad, so on and so forth, right? So, you're hitting them in different directions. I think you applied a similar principle
Yeah.
of saying, let me, meet them where they are, let me hit them through the email, let me hit them through their boss telling them to participate, let me hit them in the bathroom, let me hit them on the,
Yes.
canteen table, so on and so forth, right? So definitely that same thing that you spoke about, that internal external marketing has great similarities. I think resonates here.
And the
I
other,
also yeah, go
the
on,
other I
sorry.
think which worked really well was the digital and physical, right? So bringing QR code,
Mm,
because just seeing uh, a line that's quirky and fun does not result in an outcome, right? But you being able to quickly scan and get to the page that will tell you how you need to submit your idea and what it would take and what you will win, then
mm,
creates the actual action, right? Otherwise, it
mm,
just is a great idea that sits in your head and says, yeah, I'll go back to my desk and do it, and then you kind of forget
mm.
about it along the way.
Cool. That's one principle. I think the other principle is this a lovely principle of the. I think we often forget the importance of doing stuff both digitally and physically, right? And the combination of these two, uh, I think often there is magic there. And lastly, correct me if I'm wrong, right? I think in the modern day, interactivity is something that really matters, right? Because this entire the way you've conceptualized this thing, there is interactivity which is baked into
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
Because there is a campaign, people send ideas, then there is a there's judging of those ideas, then there's a result, so on and so forth. So that principle of making something interactive, I think, really works in the modern day, whether you're marketing to internal or external stakeholders. Does that make sense to
Yes,
you?
I completely agree. In fact,
Yeah.
reminded of something I was reading yesterday, where at the end of the day, people
Yeah.
are relationships, right? And
Mm.
so, the more you're able to create relationships, whether it is, again, like I said, whether it's, a physical line you're seeing and then you're given an idea to connect to something, or it is to your point, interacting with, not just sending a deck and saying, hey, here are some of the best examples we
Mm.
have that we've identified
Mm.
through this campaign, but
Mm.
getting them involved, getting the market stakeholders involved to be jury. So it's about
Mm.
creating those relationships that then,
Mm.
help drive results. So
Yeah, yeah, I think that's I think something you spoke about earlier also was quite interesting, which was to say, all this is good, but also when you actually deliver great results for your counterparts over the world, I think the brand builds automatically,
yeah.
right? And the trust and faith is automatic, right? And if you think of it, which is true of any external product as well that you'd sell to a customer or a client, right? That you could do all the good, beautiful marketing that you have to, but in the end, if the product and service doesn't deliver, all that becomes a false promise in some way,
And
right?
that
And I think,
backfires. That,
huh?
that backfires.
That backfires, yeah, that definitely backfires, right? In terms of what happens. So I think one thing that we all need to keep in mind for a successful organization, product or service, is the product and service needs to be good and the marketing needs to be good, right? Both things, when they fall in place, that's the time I think organizations start succeeding. Xenia, you also spoke about employer branding, right? And I'm very inquisitive because I've never met a marketeer with a huge focus on that corporate branding, or being a employer of choice, so to speak. What are some of the interesting things that have really worked for you there, in terms of making that happen?
So I mean, it's a journey, right? So we're
Mm.
still on that journey. I think
Yeah.
one thing we did really well at some point,
Mm.
which we're now going to pick up again, is our campus engagements.
Mm.
Um, because campus is really catchment area, right?
Mm.
Historically, and I think a lot of organizations may be doing that, and some advanced ones may not be. But historically, an HR team would come to us 1 week before campus placement and say, "Hey, we're going for the drive. Can you please give us some standees and a deck because we need to just
Mm.
speak?" And then,
Mm.
I mean, yes, of course, we'd give it to them, but would it
Mm.
have the outcome? I mean, it would have the outcome from, achieving the task, which is,
Mm.
going, getting some placements, giving them offers, and then them joining us eventually.
Mm.
Which works when you're in which worked for us, honestly. So it was not like it was a broken system at that time, but we weren't hiring in those numbers, right?
Mm.
The moment we started scaling, we needed to
Mm.
think differently.
Mm.
And so what we did was we uh, first looked at which, and that's where data comes into play, right? So we first
Mm.
looked at which are the campuses that we've had most success with, right? Because
Mm.
it may be great to aspire to be hiring from the IITs and IIMs of the
Mm.
world, but if
Mm. Mm.
your organization is not able to retain them or meet their
Mm.
expectations, there's very little in
Mm.
as
Mm.
marketing to say, hey, we should go to that,
Mm.
whether
Mm.
it's a
Yeah.
campus or whether it is whatever target audience.
Mm.
So it's really first
Mm.
defining that target audience, right? Which is what
Mm.
we did, and data came into big play there. And then once we've identified and we prioritized those campuses, so we said which ones are top tier one, or rather top priority, second priority, third priority. We then did very focused engagements with them,
Mm.
where we started engaging with them from their first and second years, not
Mm.
in the fourth year when they're already looking at placements,
So interesting.
right? So you get to, and you don't engage with them with, you know, just internships, but you engage with them with, you know, doing some session or doing a course, you know, and then through that, discovering some of their best students and building again a relationship with those students then through year and 3 year, 2 year, through year 3 and 4, so
Mm.
that when they are looking for jobs, they aren't necessarily sitting in placements, but they are
Mm.
already saying, I'd like to work with you, right?
Mm.
And so, really being able to build that, you know, 4 year engagement and relationship with potential hires is an investment. It requires you
Mm.
to, as a business, first know where you're heading and hence how much you want to invest and the kind of talent you're going to look at hiring in the future.
Mm.
But what it does is it builds a bond even before they've joined the organization. So,
Mm.
as a student, it works very well for them because they get to know of the organization, and so the transition becomes very seamless, right?
Mm.
It supports a campus because, from a campus perspective, you know, you're getting industry leaders to speak and train and, you know, partner with you.
Mm.
Um, and it works very well for for a organization because
Mm.
you're not waiting for just that placement or just that interview
Mm. Mm.
to, you know, test an individual or to, you know, check whether that person would be a great fit,
Mm.
but
Mm.
you have gotten to know that individual or individuals over the years.
Mm. Mm.
So your the chances of retention as well as acceptance is very high.
Mm, so interesting. So, so many things to learn from what you said, right? So, I think one, Xenia, is to say, especially when it comes to employer branding, ensure that you're well aware of, which institutes really work for you, right? Based on your past data. That's very important. Otherwise, you're in a way marketing at the wrong places and wasting, marketing dollar or rupee in some way, right? So identify the institutes that work best for you depending on what kind of profile that you want. Number two thing that you shared, which is a good learning, is engage with them way before the final placement, right? And that could be in the first year, second year, in terms of workshop sessions, so on and so forth. So then they know about you. Tomorrow it could be an internship, so they get involved in the brand, and that becomes good for them. It becomes good for you because there's a familiarity that is there between the employee and your brand, right? I think that's very, very interesting way of thinking and going about stuff.
And I
Xenia,
think,
how
sorry,
go on,
I'll
go on.
just build on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because again, for us, like I mentioned, I think prior to 23, we were only doing client marketing. The moment we
Mm.
started doing employer branding, and in fact, that was the year when I think 22 was the year of the whole great resignation, right? So there was a
Mm.
lot of emphasis on how do you, you know, attract talent and how do you retain them. And there was at that time a lot of conversation about how do you apply similar principles of client marketing to employer branding, right? And so
Mm.
it's no different. So just like what we just discussed is very often your entire lead generation pipeline, right? From a
Mm.
lead nurturing them so that they actually
Mm.
convert. And that's what we're doing across, you know, of course I spoke to you about campus, but whether it's events, you apply the same
Mm.
principles and then you nurture them so that chances are when you go to hire them later, you
Mm.
then, you know, they know about your organization, and so, you know, their reasons to accept your organization could be higher, and accept
Mm.
your offer could be higher versus them saying,
Mm.
I don't know who you are, and, you know, then it's just a
Mm.
salary conversation.
So interesting. And again, comes back to the central point that you made is marketing, right? So marketing is marketing, internal employee, prospective employee, external client,
Yeah.
the principle of knowing your audience, prioritizing all those principles absolutely kind of remain in place. Amazing insight, Xenia. Tell me, how are you as DGS using AI, right? And this is my common question that I have across all my guests, right? And what I want to know in specific is where are AI tools really helping, right? Where you've seen like a big change in terms of how you used to operate earlier to how you operate now over the past 1.5, 2 years. And which is the area where there's a lot of hype around AI, but you're not really seeing it work in practice, right? And again, the reason to ask this question is we want a practitioner's view on AI and not some, Twitter or X thread on somebody writing about it, right? Because there's often a big difference between the theory of a tool and
Yeah.
how the
Definitely.
practitioners are using it. So tell me where it's working best. Tell me where it's not working that well currently.
And is your question in for marketing specifically or for DGS as a business?
I think do both, but first let's start with marketing, and then we look at the overall Dentsu Global Services.
So honestly, for marketing as a business, we're on a journey. So like I
Mm,
keep saying everywhere,
yeah.
the first I think first is as the team we first started applying AI for our design team, right? So
Mm,
whether it's video creation or whether it is you know correcting images, generating images, to support any of the marketing collaterals we need to create. So I think that's the first place. The other place we started using AI is also for content, right? So um, you need you like I personally use it a lot when I write something and then I wanted to
mm,
edit it, right?
mm,
So it's a good grammar check. It's a good, and that's very basic, right?
mm,
But it just helps you, make sure that whatever is getting out of your inbox is,
mm,
you know, well written and not just some email you're,
mm,
just drafting immediately. Um, the other aspect is everything to do with performance marketing, and so
mm,
that has a lot of AI in terms of how do you, you know, program your campaigns, right? How do you make sure that you're targeting the right people, right, as well as automation to make sure that you're not spending money in the wrong places. So it may not necessarily always be AI, but there's a lot of automation that can help make sure you're
mm,
not overspending, underspending, or you're stopping spends at the right timing. So I think that's another place that technology can make a lot of difference. Yeah, I think that's where we are at right now. We're in fact also looking at another place where we're looking at deploying AI for just research, right? Because there's so much happening out there, and so if you want to be a brand that knows about the newest events
mm,
or about what competitors are saying. So how do you really some way get all the insights that's on Google or your search platforms or even your chatbots, right?
mm,
Or your chat GPTs and things like that. And how do you use that to give you reports on
mm,
things that you should really keep a pulse on, so that as
mm,
a brand then you are able to either be at the right place, so you identify the right events you need to be speaking at, or you have the right opinion or differentiated opinion based on what your competitors are saying. And I think that's a big um, that'll be a good addition to the team, because it really take a lot of the research work that we do uh, out of our time instead, and we'd be able to read that research to really drive better value for our organization.
mm. Got it. So where you're using it and working really well, like you said, first design, whether it's creating new images or fixing, images for all the work. So that's design is one area. Content, like you said, definitely helps in terms of grammar check, ideation, so on and so forth. Number three, you said a good layer on top of your performance marketing, right? Any kind of AI automation layer really helps in terms of optimizing your spends there. And you said it also is helping you in terms of any kind of research, for you to gather information that will, make you have a better take on stuff, right? Or even presenting that particular report to other people that could be of, where it could
Yeah.
be of help. Where is it not working? Where is it like you're like, there's a lot of hype here, but it doesn't really work that well.
So I don't know if I would be able to pick a place where it's not working, but what I can talk to is where it typically would not work. So when there's no scale involved, right? If it's
Mm,
a one-off thing, there's no repeatability. You're not doing it in volume, right?
mm,
Then the investment of building an AI, because
mm,
like even in research, it's not just doing
mm,
a chat GPT, because chat GPT may not necessarily give you. the searches that you as a brand are looking for, right? But we're actually looking at building a tool that will help us as a brand, that will be very specific to our needs, right? Which needs time, it requires energy, and then you need to train it, make sure that it's delivering the outcomes you want, because otherwise then it's just generic information, which is not helpful. So it doesn't work when you're trying to solve a problem that does not have scale, when you're trying to solve a problem that's not repeatable, and you're not doing it every time. And when you yeah, I think those are the two areas where you need to keep a watch for. So for example, we were looking at one point, even looking at deploying AI for case studies, right? So how do you create a template that people can just input information and will automatically populate onto the slide? While that may work for scale, but it will not necessarily solve the problem of um, telling great stories, because that
Got it.
requires you to understand and speak to, because again, the people inputting that information would be tech geeks and would be engineers, and they would look at it from the how of what they do, and not from the, I mean, some of them would, but not all of them would look at it from a business problem or from a business case. And so that's when then we would need to intervene to understand, and then be able to really pull out the key points that differentiate that case from another story or another example of work, right?
Got
And
it.
so that's where then AI will not, I mean, it may work for us to just have access to case studies if we are doing so many case studies at scale, and we're doing so many projects that are getting done at scale, so that you just have access. And then, but for you to actually say, okay, this is publishable and this can be used in conversations, you would still need to have that
Yeah.
human intervention.
Got it. So what I hear from you is where it kind of doesn't work as well is where there is no scale, there is no repeatability. So those are the two places, because you can't, in your context, you really need to build the AI for a great internal purpose and can't just use some tool which is readily available. And I think the other interesting point, Xenia, you made is that I think in the end, it's always going to be a combination of the AI tool and the human being, right? So it's going to be that combination that really matters, because I think just about anything that you get, even off your, very popular tools like Chat GPT and stuff like this, I think all of us know that we can't just take
No.
that and publish it, right? We need to verify it, we need to add their own insight for it. But I think for me, it's been amazing in terms of just idea generation,
Yes.
right? So the idea generation part is really cool of any kind of AI tool, right?
Mhm. And
And
especially
that really,
yeah, and if you're
yeah.
using it at, in the same chat, and then it gets to
Mm,
know what you've been writing about before, so it can build from there and not necessarily
yeah,
start afresh. But
yeah.
a fun joke I tell everybody is,
Mm,
when ChatGPT doesn't work, is
mm,
I've taken interviews and I'll be
mm,
sitting with someone across the
mm,
computer on the other
mm,
side, and you
mm,
can tell when they're reading an answer from ChatGPT that they've just
mm.
inputted in, and
Yeah,
and they just read it like, you know uh,
yeah,
it's coming out of their brain, and and they know it, and you can
yeah.
just tell the difference. And so
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, right? Just from a interview and talent point of view. For me, I have seen cases of people that still don't use, and young people that still don't use AI at all, even in the process of when they come for an interview. You can use so much of AI to prep yourself very well for an interview, right? You can do that. And then you have the flip side of what you're talking about, right, where there's a person that's so over reliant on it that he doesn't even feel like he can give an answer without the assistance of AI in some way, and he thinks that he's fooling the person from the other side just by reading something that's coming off AI, right? So I think both extremes are poor examples of how to operate. I think the better way of operating is to say, use AI, do your prep, do everything, but when you go in there, just take the question and talk.
yeah, and that's where the human intervention, right? Because it's just the
Yeah.
critical thinking of, am I what what I'm reading, is that making sense? And that's where
Yeah.
your experience and critical thinking comes
Yeah.
to play.
Yeah. What tool do you use the most as somebody that leads marketing? Is there a tool that is your favorite? Is it just the regular chat GPTs, or is there something else which is a favorite of yours?
No, I think for me right now it's still just chat GPT, but there is a realization that I definitely need to evolve into, someone that is leveraging AI more
Mm,
effectively into the work that
mm,
I do. And so, in
mm,
fact, that's something I've been looking into and
mm.
excited about pursuing over the next year.
Got it. But Xenia, do you see, just from a hiring team point of view, right, or hiring more marketeers, do you see yourself getting more out of less thanks to AI over the last 2 years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it
So
in the work that I do. I see it, across on all the examples I just mentioned. It is more for
yeah,
us.
yeah.
And like I said, it's about being smart about how you apply it and not just, AI for AI's sake.
Got it. That's very interesting. Xenia, what are some of the brands in India, Indian brands that you really admire, and what and why do you admire about these Indian brands? Tell me a little about that.
Indian brands, that's difficult.
Yeah.
I think someone just mentioned Comet is an Indian brand.
Yeah, Comet is an Indian brand.
Yeah. So then, I mean, that's honestly, I was introduced to Comet very recently, 2 weeks back when they turned
Mm.
2 years old. I'm
Mm.
not sure if you know of that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
we were again interestingly at a bar, and I had very close friends with us this time, and
Mm.
they told me, "Oh, it's 2 years old, and
Mm.
they have a sale going on." And
Mm.
so I'm not a very kids, sneakers person. Of course, I like a good sneaker, but I'm not the one who purchase and
Mm.
have multiple
Mm.
sneakers in my wardrobe. And
Mm.
so I was hesitant at first, but my friends were very persuasive. And so
Mm.
I ended up purchasing. So I first thought I'd buy it for my niece and
Mm.
then bought one for me and then bought one for my husband as well. And then it so happened
Mm.
we were just sitting on a table and talking about it. And I was purchasing online while we were at the bar,
Mm.
and there was a person on the other table that had a Comet shoe and was wearing it at that time, and so
Mm.
it just made me realize how very quickly, because it's a very young brand, right? As I got
Yeah.
to it's just 23, right? So
Mm.
2023 Indian brand, but it's
Mm.
already created a community of people that
Mm.
it's like the all stars, right? So everyone's now saying, "Hey,
Mm.
do you have a Comet?" And you must have a Comet, and buy
Mm.
the Comet. And honestly, when it got delivered, first the experience was great in terms of just the whole shipping, etc. But when it got
Mm.
delivered, they've got great branding, great packaging,
Mm. Mm.
again, great storytelling. So
Mm.
the whole experience of buying the Comet
Mm.
was, really good. And so I think that's a great Indian brand that, in fact, I think it was yesterday when Shane mentioned it was an Indian brand, and that's why
Mm.
I'm not checked. I was surprised because I honestly
Mm.
thought it was an international brand in
Mm.
the quality as well as in the packaging. So I think
Mm.
that's great.
That's interesting. I've read about Comet. I know about Comet. I've seen Comet, more so because I wouldn't consider myself a sneakerhead by the current standard of sneakerheads that are there. But exactly like you, I like a good shoe, right? And I'm very observant about it. And again, I was very happy to see such a well thought through brand, right? And I love brands coming out of India that are often, you can't tell whether it's an Indian brand or a global brand, right?
Yeah,
Because they do stuff at a very
correct.
global level,
Yeah,
so to speak, right? And that's what Comet done. But it is an Indian brand grown very, very quickly across over the last 2 years. And very interestingly, they just have one shoe type and different colors in that. That itself is very
yeah.
interesting, right? So, in a way,
And they
they've
don't have
nailed that.
like a big range either. It's
Yeah.
a limited range, but all of them look really, really cool and really fun.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that always kind of hits me, especially as an entrepreneur, saying that, if you actually create something that is interesting, although you don't have the legacy of some of the other sneaker brands that are there, people will still give you a try if you create something interesting, right? And you can still literally build a brand out of scratch. And if you do it well, people will buy you in some way, right? If you get it right. So good to see that there were so many Comet buyers right around
They
the
all
table,
love
because
and yeah.
yeah, and because all of us know that we need more Indian kind of brands to come up and succeed and do well. Xenia, what's the secret to leading marketing teams effectively? Right, because I think marketeers are quite a unique breed of people. So tell me some of the like two or three secrets of leading them well, because you have enough experience now of leading marketing teams.
So I think the first secret is for me to be a good marketing leader, I had a great mentor.
Mm,
And I think everything that I have learned is thanks to, I mean, I've become is thanks to this mentor. So,
mm,
um, and so, from him I learned, the fact that again, audience matters. You
mm,
need to care about your people. So
mm,
he would go above and beyond for his people.
mm,
And then just being true and, caring about your work and not doing it for, the, not doing it, not making marketing about frills and the whistles, but,
mm,
caring about the business and how it's going to drive value.
mm,
I think is, really what and multiple others, but if I have to really
mm,
take it. So my first thing is the mentor, and from him, that's what I learned. I
mm,
think the other is, just in terms of leading a marketing team, I think second is how do you make sure that they're always curious?
so
Because it's
interesting.
so easy to sometimes feel like, you've been there, done that, and, it's another campaign or it's another email. But how do you make sure you're always looking for inspiration
Mm,
through anything you read, and there's so much of inspiration out there today.
mm, mm,
But staying curious, I think, is the other which I try to make sure within. And curious and learning and all of that goes together.
mm,
And doesn't
mm,
necessarily have to be formal education or formal learning, but
mm,
it's
mm,
everyday curiosity.
mm,
And then I think the third one is, I think it's about just caring for your people, right?
mm,
If you don't care for your people, they won't care for their work
mm,
and they won't care for the organization. So
mm,
you are the organization to them.
mm,
And so if you can show through the work you do every day and through the way you show up to your team,
mm,
in the way you run your deliverables, or the way you know the work that you do, right,
mm,
really speaks volumes to
mm,
how they would then reciprocate and do the same. And so just leading by example and caring for them, and
mm.
I think just creates that ripple effect.
What an amazing answer, Xenia. So again, I summarize because we want to treat this more as a show where people can pick out stuff from, right? So, in order to lead marketing team, then I think the advice that you have would run across all teams, right? But if you want to lead marketing teams well, ensure that they're curious, right? And I think when you're curious as a leader, it probably has a rub off on them as well, right? So ensure the curiosity is there towards stuff. I think number two point is so important, right? Caring for people in some way. And I love the line where you say when you care for people, people care for their work. When you care for people, people care about their job, right? I think that's a fantastic kind of line. And for each and every person, the organization in some ways their boss, right? So if that boss is doesn't care for them, it's the equivalent of the organization not caring for them, right? There's a very nice quote that says, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care."
Yeah.
Right. So that part, if you care for your 12 people or 10 people in your team, 10 people care back for you, right? And that creates the amazing dynamic that benefits both them and benefits the leader as well in some sense, right? So I think care for people is an amazing quality. And I think lastly, the thing that you shared about lead by example, right? People don't hear what you say, but they watch what you do in some way, right? So you operating as a world class professional is inspiration for your team to operate as world class professionals. And for sure, it's very important in your business in specific because you are dealing with the world, right? So if you don't operate as a world class professional, it's just so difficult for you to make the right impression and provide value to people across the world. And I think it has a very the more you do that, the more brand that you build for the country that you come from and the work that you're doing, right? When you're a world class professional leading by example, right? I think all of them were very, very three very good points of leading. And I just also want to make a note of the other point that you shared, which is keeping value for business first and not caring that much about the bells and whistles, right? Because often as marketeers we tend to forget that part of get caught up in the bells and whistles and not really the value for the business in some way, right? So I think that was a fantastic point. Xenia, any last things that you'd like to share? Anything that you think I should have asked you that I didn't? Okay, let me end with one since you can't think of any. Okay? Young marketeer just passed out. He's done his BBA, done his BCom, right? And he's just passing out, getting into the workplace, aspires to become a marketing leader like you someday. What advice would you have for that person just getting out of college to be a great marketeer?
I'd say stay curious, stay human,
Mm,
and stay sharp, right? So,
mm,
stay curious is again to the same point, which is you need to keep learning and unlearning.
mm,
Uh, just because you've got a degree or you may have worked on the best campaign doesn't mean you definitely want to take principles and learnings from there into everything else you do further. Stay human is because, like we've been discussing, I think you need to know your audience. If you don't know your audience, and if you're just running behind a trend, you won't stay relevant, right?
mm,
So you need to know your people, know the audience, and spend time invest time in knowing that.
mm,
And then the last is stay sharp, because I think as marketers we need to pay attention to the details, whether it's that comma or that full stop, and just caring about your work, right? So you need to be, because what you say also then defines an organization,
mm,
right? And a lot of what you create is what people out there see and then make a perception of the brand, right?
mm,
And so it's like Comet, right? So
mm,
the experience I had and the packaging that they gave, even if they're simple stickers,
mm.
created an impression of the brand. And so
Got it.
staying sharp and making sure everything that you're doing is on point, and
Mm,
even it's few things. So even if you're doing, like the famous saying, less is more, but you do those few things but do them really well, I
mm.
think goes a long way.
Cool. Thank you, Xenia. Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure chatting with you. And I'm glad I met you and your husband very randomly at a lovely bar and we really struck a great conversation. Real pleasure talking to you. I learned so much through this conversation and I hope to be in touch.
Yes, thanks, Swapnil. It was great being on this conversation and being invited to it. Honestly, it's my first. Uh, but yeah, I think it was an honor. It's been a great conversation with you, as was the first time we met. And so looking forward to staying connected.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Take care.